Hi, Yomi Lover here with another take on a show. This time I'm talking about She-Hulk. It's a show that's taken everybody by storm, but it's actually not that good. A lot of people have been trying to defend it and trying to go through lengths to even prop it up as this spectacular new MCU revelation that nobody is cheering on. The only person I see is probably Simon Pegg, which is really weird. He said something about Tatiana, that he was gonna, marry her in another dimension, and it sounded scripted, really scripted. He even said that she was the bomb, or they were the bomb, She-Hulk was the bomb, and it didn't sound like it was in his lexicon or vocabulary. It sounded like something that some writer from the She-Hulk staff wrote up and just told him to say, because they weren't winning against whoever it was that they were talking about. But here I am trying to talk about She-Hulk, the show. But I also want to talk a little bit about Wakanda Forever, which is another upcoming movie from Marvel, so I might talk about that later on in this video. But right now I'm talking about She-Hulk. So what is it about She-Hulk that pisses off fans so much that they don't like it, or they say that the show's not funny, or the show is written for Karren? And honestly, it's like, Karren, you contemptuous wench, free us, free us from this society that you have trapped us in. It's kind of like that. But honestly, if they say that the show's made for Karren, then there's obviously a reason for it. Because a lot of people who have read the She-Hulk comic obviously have a lot of love for it, and obviously have a lot of liking for it. When I was growing up, I was told that She-Hulk was written for everybody, but it wasn't written for everybody because mostly the people who were reading it was mostly males. Male audiences, because mostly girls back in the 80s, or when comics were at their height, girls weren't reading this stuff. They were kind of just minding their own business, doing their makeup, all this other stuff. Mostly teenage boys and guys and men were reading it because men read comics. That was just a thing that they did back then. Hey, you want to go out for something to eat, maybe get a comic book later, maybe we can go back to the military barracks, something like that. Those kind of guys were reading She-Hulk. And honestly, it shows, because the writing in the She-Hulk comic is mostly directed towards talking to a male audience. What do you think you're doing? When she's breaking the fourth wall. So that's something that most people don't pick up on. But if you haven't read the She-Hulk comic, I would highly recommend going over and buying a She-Hulk comic, especially one from the 1980s. An issue, if you could. If you could get your hands on one of those, because those are rare and now they're being traded. But right now, though, I'm talking about the show She-Hulk. So She-Hulk show doesn't do any of that. It doesn't make any episodes directed towards the male audience in any way. It actually does something worse, which is tries to villainize its male audience and make them out to be the bad guys when they're really not. It's like the writers had some sort of grudge against white cis males, which is just kind of... I hate to use the word cis because I'll just say white males, or just everybody who's a male, who's a man in general. Not just white people, just men in general. Men are the enemy in this show, which is really weird. Because I'm just aren't men the people that are reading your comic books and, propping up these characters and making honestly, keeping you in business, which is very interesting to me. That the show would go on an attack towards its main money makers, which is just so you don't like money. Okay, you don't like money, we agree, we're not watching the show. That's what most people are doing. But I want to talk about the show in its essence. What is it about the show that makes people pissed off? For one thing, it relies on Daredevil to try and bail it out of this unpopularity loop that it's had. Because it seems to be written for wine moms. And wine moms, either they're watching it on streaming right now, or they're just watching it with their friends. Which, I don't know anybody who is a wine mom who would be reading a comic book, because wine moms don't read comic books. which is very interesting to me. Why they would make a show specified towards wine moms. I'm just like, your mama doesn't read comic books, so you might as well stop trying to write for your mama, which is what the writers of She-Hulk don't understand. There's an episode where she goes to yoga, with a villain troupe, and the villain troupe is made out to be the lamest possible, adaptations of their comic book counterparts. The comic book counterparts are, by all standards, infinitely more exciting and action-packed, but I guess the writers wanted to save money, so they didn't make them out to be as good as their comic book counterparts, where, like, Man-Bull, in the comics, he's a lot cooler, and he's actually, action-packed, and, very aggressive, and in this one, he's, like, pacified, basically whipped. He's whipped, basically. Nobody cares. And the episode treats it as if it's I know it's a comedy, it's trying to say it's a comedy, but here's the thing. Nobody's laughing. Nobody thinks it's funny, because everybody realizes that the comic books are infinitely better. Because you go to a comic book, you open it up, you compare it to the show's crap. It's not very good. So, let's go back to that episode that I was talking about that feels like it was made for wine moms. Basically, the villains are all in a yoga session. None of them are doing anything action-packed. Nothing really has any... Like, Jen is talking about her, basically her Tinder date, who basically ghosted her and doesn't want to be in her presence. But, gee, I wonder why. Well, that's gonna make sense later on in the episode when they say that the character basically did that so that way Hulk can get hold of her nudes or some shit, and basically showed off and slut shame her, I don't know. But honestly, it's just like the show says she's a slut, but everybody can basically see her turning into a hoe, and everybody tries to write this off as a female positive empowerment. No, that's not empowering. You know what's empowering to me as a female? Seeing, basically very muscular women, like in, let's say Wonder Woman, those kind of women that can kick your ass and basically beat you up. That's empowering to me, not the whole I'm sleeping around and being a slut kind of thing. That's not empowerment. That's just you being a hoe. Which is kind of interesting because nobody wanted to point out the fact that her and Cardi B doing the twerking and stuff and showing off their butts, that was a hoe move, and that's just you being a hoe. So it's like She-Hulk, she's a hoe now, which is way worse than anything that they wrote in the comic books. The comic books were at least playful and at least funny. This is just turning, like, I've never seen the internet hate a scene so badly that they basically meme it and make it to where she's farting in the Hulk's face instead of twerking, which is hilarious because I think that kind of humor just shows how bad the show is. If you can meme the show's not that good. The writers are never going to admit that. They're basically going to call everybody a man baby or an incel or a troll. Oh, you're a troll if you hate this show. You live under a bridge. You hate fun. No, they don't hate fun. They hate bad writing. The bad writing basically makes everybody out to be the bad guy except for the show writers and She-Hulk. She-Hulk is basically a narcissist. She's not written to be like a great female character. Honestly, and the writers will always defend it, will be like, well, you're just not enlightened enough. You're not embraced enough. No, I am a person who grew up on Himoto Arakawa, a female who wrote shows, like Fullmetal Alchemist. She actually wrote the manga for it, and everybody was comparing She-Hulk to Fullmetal Alchemist. One will make you cringe, the other one will enlighten you and bring you to another dimension of harmony and, honestly, balance in your life. And I will say that show is Fullmetal Alchemist. So there's an example of good writing written by a female. I'm not like a sexist or anything, because, I mean, why would I be when I grew up on Himoto Arakawa and people like, let's see, the writer of Urusei Yatsura. I forgot her name, but I know that she wrote Inuyasha. Those are also shows and mangas written by females. So you could credit those good works. Oh yeah, by the way, everybody's watching Urusei Yatsura right now. They're not watching She-Hulk. She-Hulk, they just watched it because they wanted to meme it and make fun of it and tear it down. But Urusei Yatsura, they're actually watching it because they enjoy it and they like it. And they're not going to complain about it. Because that show is timeless, let me tell you right now. And it had a good footing in the 80s too, just like She-Hulk. Except here's the difference, is She-Hulk is not being written in a way that's insufferable. And Urusei Yatsura is being written in a way that's commendable and, in fact, endearing. And it's true to its comic counterparts. So there's your difference between Western and Eastern writing. Eastern writing is coming out on top, once again, in the manga versus comic books race against, people's wallets. And honestly, it just shows us where we're going wrong in our Western society, because if you can't write a show that people like and people are going to find endearing, then you're not doing your job as a writer. You really aren't. And I think the She-Hulk staff is just kind of trying to compensate by calling everybody who doesn't like their show a troll, and that doesn't look well to anybody who's watched the show. So I want to talk about the show again, in more depth. Basically, there's an episode with, Daredevil, and Daredevil basically just goes over there and boinks She-Hulk for 5 seconds, and then goes on his way and does the walk of shame. Everybody is just like, oh my god, you deserved a better show. You deserve way better than this. And I agree with them. Daredevil does deserve to be in a better show. He doesn't deserve to be doing the walk of shame against She-Hulk. The way this character is written, it is written as if She-Hulk isn't written for the male audience or female audience even, because she's written for a Karren. And Karren has taken the reins on this character and is doing things that Karren likes to do with She-Hulk. And it's just not good. And the writer of the show is just kind of smelling her woke farts, and it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere good. Oh yeah, and there was the whole freaking Hulk reveal with Hulk's son, Scar, who, by the way, I've read Planet Hulk before. Planet Hulk is amazing. You haven't read the Planet Hulk yet, go out there and go read it right now. Go buy it, in fact. It's actually quite awesome. And Hulk does indeed have a wife on that planet, where he basically, a lot of people were wondering, a lot of people that I know were wondering how Hulk made it with a chick and didn't kill her. There's an easy explanation for that. She can keep up with him, basically. She's an alien, and she's also a warrior. She's almost the same build and fighting stance as She-Hulk. In fact, the same build and body structure as She-Hulk. And she can basically take anything that he dishes out, which is what's great about Planet Hulk, which is a way better story. I'd say go watch the movie for that, too. That's gonna interest you loads more than this show. The show barely touches even that. And basically, people are making fun of Scar, the reveal of Scar. They're memeing him. They're memeing his bald head. And I saw it was like a shave line. Like, they might give him back his hair, if we're lucky. They might give him back his glorious Conan the Barbarian mane that he has grown out in the comics and that people have come to love. But essentially, everybody is pissed off because they just did my boy dirty. They did my boy Scar dirty. He is not the same Scar that we know from the comics. He is basically a whipped version because Karren demands it. Karren She-Hulk. She just demands it. And I'm just like, listen, the show doesn't really aim towards the comic book reading audience. It aims towards a select few. And that select few happen to be wine moms. And wine moms are not going to watch this either because they're too busy watching Days of Our Lives and other stuff that isn't comic book related because they're not a bunch of nerds. So I don't know who the show was written for, but it's obviously not written for anybody that they intended. And as for it being sex positive towards girls and guys, you might want to get that out of your whole coverage, because it being sex positive show is not going to teach kids anything. It's not going to teach them any morals of any kind. It's just going to teach them, oh, it's okay to be a hoe now. No, it's not okay to be a hoe. Okay? You're not going to succeed being a hoe. And if you think you're going to succeed being a hoe, I got news for you. The real world isn't very nice towards hoes. It's just kind of messed up. I know I'm not slut shaming or hoe shaming, but I'm just gonna say it, it's not okay to be a hoe. But some people are like, well, I like my hoes all dirty and everything, and, twerking like She-Hulk. Great, but that show's obviously not written for anybody like kids in mind. So, honestly, the show being sex positive towards kids, the message is not getting through. They're just doing that for publicity's sake. I would tell my kid, if I was watching this with my kid, I don't have any kids, by the way, but I have plenty of younger cousins that watch it with me. They're kind of like my siblings. And if I was watching this with my siblings and watching the show She-Hulk, I'd tell them straight up, this show sucks, go read the comics. And they'd be like, oh, where can I buy a comic book? We'll buy it online. We'll manage somehow, okay? Just, this is not okay. Being a hoe in the society is not okay. Because you're not gonna get anywhere, and you're not gonna get into college being a hoe. But anyways, so I don't see what the show is trying to get with that message, but clearly right off the bat, the She-Hulk show is basically doing everything in its power to be unlikable. There's a scene in the She-Hulk show that I was watching that I couldn't help but cringe at, because I just realized, it's trying to belittle the Hulk and make the Hulk a second-rate character in his own canon, and basically Jen goes on a rant about how she can control her anger way better than Hulk because she's a woman, and that's basically very selfish and stupid to me, because Hulk tried to commit suicide. Like, what are you doing trying to act like you have the upper hand here and you have the highest hill in this argument? You don't. Because the Hulk tried to commit suicide. He didn't want to be the Hulk in the first place. That's how he controls his anger. And it took him a long time just to control his. But of course, as she's good at everything, and everything she does is amazing because she's better than the Hulk, as the show writers wrote. But obviously, I didn't see her do anything slightly like Hulk, because the Hulk has gone through so much just to earn his power and control it. And she kind of just wings it on the side. And most people didn't like that, because they like how Hulk went through a whole story arc just to keep his power and be the Hulk, He's not trying to do it because he's a man. Like, he's gone through a lot. So, this is just what's interesting to me, is that the show throws you for a loop. And it throws you for a loop in this whole writing thing that it's just, gosh, how can I say this? The show hates its audience, and because it hates its audience, it's gonna write characters that also hate the audience, and obviously they don't think you're smart enough to go over and read the She-Hulk comics, which is kind of dumb, because most people are smart enough to go and do that. So I hope that the She-Hulk comic writers that wrote the comic way back in the day get more publicity and attention, and obviously get more people that want to read them now. Now they're collector's items. Congratulations, the She-Hulk show is so bad that most people are like, dang, I want to go back and read the comic now. I gotta read this comic. So that's good news to me, because I'm all for supporting comic book writers, and comic book writers don't get enough attention, they don't get enough credit for the stuff that they've done, and they don't get enough, they don't get enough love out there from people that are just not comic book readers. But of course, everybody doesn't have enough time to go out and buy the She-Hulk comic, so they're probably going to watch the show and hate it. Honestly, if you're watching the show because you hate it, and you're going to hate it right off the bat, if the show makes you angry, I would just highly recommend Game of Thrones House of Dragon, not She-Hulk, okay? Don't go watching She-Hulk, because it's just gonna make you angry. And if you're anybody like me, who is not an incel, and is not a white male, and is not a, man baby? Yeah, or, a troll. I'm not a troll or an incel or a man baby, and I'm not somebody who says, oh, I hate the show, because I'm not somebody who hates fun. I like fun, and I'm not somebody who hates women, because I am a woman, so the show is obviously not written for me. It's trying to be, it's not. Because it's unrelatable. And to somebody who's a Gen Zer, it's not very relatable, because it was written by somebody who was a millennial, who is writing for wine moms, and it's not being written for me. Shows like Urusei Yatsura are written for me, and those were written by a 50-year-old woman. A 50-year-old woman knows what a teenage girl craves over somebody who is like a millennial in this day and age. So how do you fathom that our show writers are so bad they can't even write for teenagers that they're supposed to be writing for, and they can't even write for people like me who they're supposed to be directing their audience towards, okay? But it's just like She-Hulk was written with LA people in mind, and the LA lifestyle is not for everyone. I'm just gonna say it right now. Drinking and going to parties and getting smashed and getting laid all the time. Most people are not like that in LA. Most people are probably living in the bad part of LA where you can't party, you can't have drinks like that, and you can't get smashed. So, honestly, I'm not sure who this show's written for, but it's obviously not written for everybody. So, once you do that, you basically isolate your audience into not liking a show not written for them. So, you gotta take a note from the She-Hulk comics. At least take notes from the She-Hulk comics, and that your writing isn't up to par with their standards. And I'm not gonna be the one who's gonna be a perfectionist here, but I will say that the She-Hulk comic is infinitely better. I've read some of it online. It's pretty good. Gosh, what else does this show do that's pretty cringeworthy? Oh yeah, the fact that they wrote Todd to be the one who's a Hulk King, and he's gay, which is interesting to me. So he's anti She-Hulk, and he's gay. I think he just wants her powers, man. Is that what they're writing in these, rooms that I don't know about? They're writing that the guy Todd is the villain because he just wants her powers because he thinks that she doesn't deserve them? It's very cliche and predictable, and another throwaway Marvel villain that doesn't have a point, doesn't have a purpose, and nobody even likes him. And, pretty much, it's not memorable at all. So I don't know what the writers were writing or thinking when they wrote this ending, because they obviously wrote themselves into a hole because they can't meet any of the standards that the audience wants. They can't deliver a good ending. They can't deliver us anything action-packed or anything close to Planet Hulk. Heck, Taika Waititi did something that was almost close to Planet Hulk in Thor Ragnarok, and we got a little taste of it, but we didn't get everything, which is kind of sucky. And I want to honestly talk about Thor Love and Thunder for a second. I honestly thought that Beta Ray Bill was going to show up, because if Beta Ray Bill showed up, it would have probably been a better movie, and you probably would have had more Thors picking up the hammer, and not just Jane picking up the hammer, but a bunch of other, maybe multi-dimensional Thors picking up the hammer. That would have been a better story, I think. But I'm not here to talk about Thor Love and Thunder right now. I'm talking about She-Hulk, the show that has pissed off many a movie watcher and many a comic book fan. And it's not helping that the audience is being treated like it doesn't have brain, which is just really bad. And honestly, there's a lot of scenes in She-Hulk that are just kind of cringeworthy and meme material. And the fact that it's meme material is amazing to me. The fact that you could meme She-Hulk twerking is honestly hilarious to me. But let me see. What else does the She-Hulk show do that upsets most people? Let's see. There's a whole gathering of She-Hulk haters in a single room, and I guess that's supposed to be the YouTube community, but that just shows you how much leverage the She-Hulk or the anti-She-Hulk people, or the people that don't like this She-Hulk show, that just shows you how much power they actually have, instead of showing them to be minuscule and not something to be taken seriously like a troll. So they're obviously not very troll-like characters. They're just, a group full of normal people that agree that She-Hulk didn't deserve any of the powers that she got. But it's just like, they don't even cover that in the comics. The comics doesn't make all men out to be bad guys, or out to be like She-Hulk haters, or she has a cult following of people that hate her and people that like her, which is just kind of dumb to me. So it obviously tells me that they couldn't write a likable villain or a main villain for this show, so they had to make YouTubers the villains, because that's more compelling than, say, a fleshed out villain that could kick your ass and probably laugh and relish in it. Like, say, Doctor Doom. You couldn't write somebody like Doctor Doom in this show because this show has no good actors and it has no affordable budget that can afford those people. So I guess they had to write YouTubers to be the bad guys. Easiest writing in the room. High five, guys. We did it. We made YouTubers out to be the bad guys. Oh, except YouTubers are basically making more money off of the hate from this show than they are. So it's not a win-win, guys. You didn't do anything. You just made them stronger. Congratulations. You're morons. Let's see. What else could I say about She-Hulk that hasn't been said? My God, there is a lot to unpack with this show because of how bad it is. Let me see. The special effects, they don't look very good. Some people said she looks like Shrek. Some other people says that she looks like the Jolly Green Giant from the bean cans. And some other people were just saying that she was played by a man. Like, nobody realized that she was being played by a man this entire time. How fascinating, except there's a very tall woman that disagrees with you that they had pictures of. But I'm just like, why would she, why? You just stick a wig on a brother and paint him green. He's She-Hulk now. Great. That's interesting, but most people are not... They're not blown away by that news. They're just like, if I could find a way to, if I could find a way to make this sexy, I will. Okay, you do that. But let me see. What else? Oh yeah. The fact that the Hulk leaves the show and does something way more interesting off screen is very, very hilarious to me. Because it tells me that they didn't know what they were going to do with the Hulk at all. So, obviously what he's doing off screen, getting his son, is way more interesting than the show itself. And, that's honestly very sad, because you'd think that the Hulk would have more to do in a show like She-Hulk. And I would just say, like, I've seen She-Hulk in cartoons, in, heck, Agents of Smash. That show is not anything like the Incredible Hulk show, where the Incredible Hulk actually had stuff for She-Hulk to do, which was way more interesting than anything that they did in Agents of Smash, which I think they got She-Hulk right in that aspect. And they got her, she's one of the guys, and she just gets along with them. See, that's a show that most people won't talk about because they didn't watch it. I did. I had plenty of time to do that. Like, She-Hulk, Agents of Smash. It basically shows She-Hulk is as she's written by probably men and women in that show. She's written to be one of the guys, and she's pretty cool, like, in that show. So they obviously weren't thinking about stuff like that when they wrote this show. They were just thinking about, the writers were reflecting their own personalities and hang-ups rather than writing for an audience that is all-encompassing. Like, see, that's a show written for kids. That's a show that's positive for kids. I'd say go ahead, watch that show, Agents of Smash. Just go ahead and watch that. Don't watch this show, because I don't give a shit if they're talking about sex positivity. It's not sex positive, it's just being a hoe in front of kids. If you want to watch a She-Hulk that isn't a hoe, go ahead and watch that cartoon, or watch the Incredible Hulk show. You'll probably find a She-Hulk that's likable, more interesting, and not a hoe. It's just kind of sad to me, because this is where writing has gone in the last, 5 years? It's gone from great game, end game, to sad Hulk show, She-Hulk show that can't really make it with all these viewers, or can't really hit that line that you need to hit in order to basically get an audience to pay attention. Which I'm just, oh man. If this show is written for kids, I don't think it was, because of how much sex is in here. It was probably written to try and, yeah, it was written for wine moms. I'm not gonna second guess this. It was written for wine moms, not teenagers or people like me. So, you got shows that cover that very well, and they're written by 50-year-old women, which is interesting to me because those 50-year-old women happen to be Japanese, and they happen to know exactly what an audience wants in a story, because they're good storytellers. They're not bad writers like the She-Hulk crew. So, Himoru Arakawa, let's see, gosh, that's a good female writer. I know I talked about her already, but I'll go watch Urusei Yatsura. If you don't believe me, that's a show written by a woman, and it's actually good, and teenage girls and guys will both like it. So that's a show that feels like it was written for its audience and knows who its audience is. She-Hulk, here's the problem, doesn't know who its audience is. And it doesn't like men, even though men were primarily reading the comics at one point, and, buying and keeping She-Hulk writers in business. So, obviously, it hates men, and it wants to make them out to be the bad guys, because every man in this show is written as either a stereotype, like a misogynist, or some unlikable asshole douchebag that nobody likes, or somebody who's either too effeminate or too gay. And I'm just like, there's nothing wrong with being gay, but here's the thing, is that the show obviously doesn't like strong, straight men who have an opinion and have a brain and know what they want when they want it. So, the show's not written for them. It's written against them, which is really dumb in my opinion, because you can get really well-written male characters like Daredevil, but it's not enough to save your show, because your show attacks people like that. So anyways, that was my whole rant on She-Hulk. She-Hulk is obviously pissed off many a comic watcher and many a comic reader and many a Marvel MCU fan who has a brain and thinks for themselves. So, if you're gonna watch it and you don't like it, I would highly recommend not watching it and go watching Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood or Urusei Yatsura or, say, another positive kids show, Agents of Smash, and go watching that with your kid. Okay, I would highly recommend doing that. Because gone are the days where Hulk was actually interesting and Marvel was writing for everybody. Because those days have sailed, and now they're going downhill. They're not keeping up to par with our standards, which is really sad. Because I really want Marvel to succeed and not fall and go into a dumpster fire. I want to see it succeed and come out with great characters. Oh, by the way, Namor in Wakanda Forever, he kind of just reminded me of that one guy from Friday. I'm an Aztec warrior. I'm an Aztec warrior. It's not, I don't know what they're thinking there. They're trying to be diverse. I get it, but it just kind of came out as a joke to me. But, I obviously need to try and see this movie before I judge it. If I see the movie and I don't like it, I'll point out reasons why, because I'm a big Namor fan. I've actually read his comic books with him in the Illuminati, and he's a badass. So if Namor isn't a badass in Wakanda Forever, then I'm just gonna tear the movie apart with another review. I really am. So, I hope he's a badass in Wakanda Forever, because I don't hate Wakanda. Let me see. I didn't really take to the Wakanda movies, the movies with Black Panther. They weren't, blow me away, amazing movies that were just like once in a lifetime kind of thing. But I do like the idea of Namor making a debut. So if he's a badass in this movie, then congratulations, writers. You did a good job. Good job, writers. But if he's not, and he's a totally whipped whooping boy, I'm gonna have a say about it. Alright, so that's my rant about Marvel and She-Hulk. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe. Alright, thank you. Peace.